I want to get into the Thanksgiving recap, but our guest just popped up. Like, talk about perfect timing. Jesus, this was fantastic. As we said earlier, our guest is professional poker player Chris Moneymaker, who will be in Orlando, Orange City Poker Room for the Moneymaker Tour, December 4th through the 16th. You can go to moneymakerpt.com or orangecitypoker.com. I'm planning on hopefully just playing one of the events, so I don't have to continue to buy in to get to the rest of the events, but I don't think that's probably going to happen. Let's welcome to the show the man himself. It is Chris Moneymaker. How you doing, Chris?
Doing awesome. Let me know what event you're playing so I can make sure I jump in that one.
That's yes, I don't want that. Do you know, after all these years of being a professional poker player, Chris, do you have any idea the feeling that us amateurs have when we are in a hand with a professional poker player? Do you realize the stress that causes us?
Of course. That's part of so I remember back when I was an amateur and I was playing against Phil Hellmuth, for example, and the Johnny Chan and those guys. And I remember the anxiety and the thought that they're just better than me, or they somehow have magical powers and they can just look into my soul and know what I have. Um, and then you quickly realize that we're all just the same. We all get two cards. There's nothing special. The only thing difference between someone like me and someone like you is I'm going to adjust my play, and I'm going to get value where people miss, and I'm not going to give up value where people usually try to get value. So I make adjustments on the fly. There's nothing really special that we do, but yeah, I mean, I definitely remember back in the day being like, oh my God, I'm playing with Johnny Chan. I'm so nervous. Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? But that's what's so great about being me, is because I can pick it up pretty quickly about people that either want to stay away from me or they want to play pots with me to try to beat me. It's pretty easy to tell, different opponents want to do different things, and you just adapt your game to suit whatever fits best for what I need to do.
That's what I'm learning now. I've been playing for, over 10 years on and off, amateur, of course, but as I play more often now, because I just moved 9 minutes from the Orange City Poker Room, and I'm getting better and I'm learning, and I'm not a dumb guy being in this business for, 3 decades. You do pick up on people. I always say I can read somebody in 60 seconds just because that's what radio, does to you. But one thing that I'm trying to get better at now is getting maximum value on my hands. And that means betting more on the river. I have a tendency to just go, okay, I made it to the river. They checked. Hopefully I win, because I'm afraid to get re-raised and be put in that situation. Terrified of it.
Yeah, but don't you? I'm sure you've played long enough now. You realize that it is so very, very, very rare that anybody's ever going to check raise you on the river, making a play at you. The majority of the time, almost 90% of the time, when someone check raises you on the river, if a scare card didn't come, like if a flush didn't come in or something, or if it's just a normal random card, they're not going to check raise you unless they have you beat. And a lot of times they'll call off with second pair, top pair. If you have a top pair big kicker, I mean, you just go for the value. And a lot of times you have middle pair, you go for the value. That is very rare that they're ever going to check raise you in that spot. So once you take that fear away, it's easy to go for value.
Yeah, I had that happen like 3 times yesterday, and I kicked myself every freaking time. Let's go back, for those in the audience that aren't familiar with you, Chris, to the very beginning. And I know you tell the story every time, but this is the first time we've met, and I've interviewed.
I was born in 1975.
Me too. In Atlanta, by the way. You're an Atlanta guy. That's where these two guys are at right now.
Shit, we could have been born the same, same hospital, whatever.
Right. So you go back and explain, how you became Chris Moneymaker, the professional poker player, and the actual term, the Moneymaker effect, which is probably the most profound term in the business. Go back to that very beginning and tell that story for everybody.
Okay, so basically, I was an accountant. I worked, 9 to 5 like anybody else, and I started playing poker with my friends around a kitchen table. We would play Midnight Baseball, Chase the Queen, AC Doocy. If anybody plays like older home games, they would know what this is. It's a lot of wild games. It's a lot of random games. We dealt dealer's choice, so we always had one guy that would go down to Tunica, which is the only place to play poker in the area at the time, and he would always bring back Texas Hold'em, and he would want to deal it. Well, we freaking hated the game. It was the worst game ever because back then there was no such thing as no limit Texas Hold'em. It was all limit. So we would play $1, $2 limit Hold'em, and it was the worst game ever. And there was never big pots, you know. So we basically just all folded to him and let him have it. And so you fast forward, we do this for a while, and then the movie Rounders is out. I watch the movie Rounders, find out about No Limit Texas Hold'em, and I'm going down at this time. I go down to Tunica and I play, once a month maybe. But all they have, I play the 10-20 and the 5-10 limit Hold'em because again they don't have anything no limit wise at this time. And in the room, it's pretty weird that if you play poker, written on the wall it says checking and raising is not allowed. So you couldn't even check raise. Like if you didn't bet your hand, you just had to call.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so it's pretty crazy. And so I'm down there playing, and a guy tells me, "Hey, you can play online poker," and I'm like, "Yeah, that just seems fishy as hell. Like poker's a game of reading people and sitting in front of somebody, yada yada." And but anyways, it's a 4-hour drive for me to play poker in the nearest location. So I decided I'm going to start playing online poker a little bit, and I play, and I'm not doing anything special. Again, I'm playing 1-2, 2-4, just my normal little limit games. But they do have tournaments, so I start dabbling in tournaments a little bit here and there, and wasn't doing anything special. But they had back then on Poker Stars, they had the lobby was very very poorly laid out, so they would have your tournaments mixed in with your sit and goes, your cash games mixed in with your satellites. Like it was really hard to like be able to tell what was going on. But I liked playing sit and goes. That was kind of my thing back in the day. But the problem is back then, sit and goes hardly ever went off. Like it was very rare to see a sit and go like go off. You could sit there and wait 5 hours before a sit and go would fill.
Mm.
So whenever you saw one, you would just immediately jump in if it was close to filling. So I saw one that was 17 out of 18. So I immediately clicked on it and jumped in it and started playing it. It was a $40, $86 buy-in, and the one thing I didn't realize at the time is it was a sit and go to the main event of the World Series of Poker. I thought it was a cash satellite. I had no idea I was playing in a cash satellite tournament. So immediately I'm kind of upset because I think at this time I only have like $200 in my account. Like I'm not just crushing it or anything. And 40 of it or 86 of it's going to this stupid. It gets me a seat into the $600 tournament that weekend, which then gets me into the main event. So there are three seats to the main event. So I got to win. I got to win this tournament outright, play the $600 on the weekend and get top three. Then I get no money, but I got to go out to Vegas and play in a tournament with all these pros that know what they're doing, and I'm just some random dude, in Tennessee, grinding on my computer, which is not even real poker, because it's online. So this is what is set in front of me here with this how this story unfolds, and just so happens I end up winning that tournament. Obviously, I win the next tournament, and um, consequently, as the next tournament's getting down towards the end, back then you couldn't sell your main event seat. So, first three places with the $10,000 main event seat and like 1,000 in spending money, and then fourth place was $8,000 in cash. Just so happens I had about $8,000 in credit card debt at the time.
Uh,
So I was trying to get fourth place. I didn't even want the seat. I would have been so happy just to have $8,000, pay off my credit card, and move on with my life. Like to be debt free from my credit card would have been really special. So I tried to start dumping. My friend's watching on his computer at home, and he calls me. And he's like, "Hey man, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I need fourth place. I'm trying to get fourth." He's like, "I'll take half your action. I'll give you 5 grand and take half your action, but don't lose this opportunity. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to go play the main event." So I was like, "All right, screw it, fine, why not?" So I end up winning the seat, and me and my buddy, to celebrate, we go down to Tunica the next weekend, and my buddy just decides he's going to blow his entire bankroll, all 5,000 he was going to give me down in Tunica that weekend. So he doesn't have the 5,000 to give me anymore. So I go to my dad and I go to another friend, raise $4,000. So I end up having $5,000 to go out and play the World Series of Poker. So me and my buddy, we go out there and spend 7, 8 days playing this poker tournament against the best in the world, and somehow, fight through all of them and end up taking it down, and next thing you know, 20 some odd years later, I'm talking to you.
Yeah, what was the payout for that year, 2003?
It was a $2.5 million.
2.5 million. What's it at now? Like 12, 13?
Yeah, it's really insane now. So I had to get through 839 people the year that I won. Now there's about 8,000, 9,000 entrants each year,
Uh,
and the top prize is 12, $13 million.
but you also 2003. So that was about 5 years, 6 years shy of the TV boom.
Well,
So
no, it was actually right when the TV boom happened. 2003 is when the TV boom happened because there was the first year they recorded a seven-part series on ESPN, and it just happened at that time the NHL lockout was going on. So they didn't really have anything to put on TV, so they were putting what got ratings, and poker at the time was getting ratings. So they basically just put my show on loop over and over and over and over. And I was on TV. If you turned on ESPN after 10 o'clock at night, it was
uh,
all poker all the time. If you turned on, a lot of times during even prime time, it was poker, 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 and it was my episode just getting replayed over and over. And that's the term moneymaker effect kind of started because of that phenomenon, them just putting it on TV all the time, and then people looking up and seeing, this young fat kid from Tennessee that looks like everybody else going in and winning this poker tournament against all these pros, and like, well, wait, if that dumb kid can do it, well, hell, why can't I? I mean, I wasn't the first amateur to win the main event. There's a guy the year before me that won. It was an amateur, never really played,
uh,
by the name of Robert Varconi. The problem with Robert is he went to MIT. Like, he's like a genius. He's a smart guy, so people can't really relate to him. People could relate to me, and they could, just see me having a beer with them and hanging out, and then like, hey, this seems like something I want to try. So all of a sudden, you got every single person in the world trying to think they know how to play poker, and poker just explodes, and everybody starts doing it.
yeah. And then so the the like the Brat Pack of poker professionals with the Phil Ivey, the Helmuth, the Negrano, the Unabomber, like all these guys that would sit down at that, high stakes game that we would watch, late night with Gabe Kaplan, or Norm Macdonald, those shows,
Mhm.
that poker run, would you put yourself in that Brat Pack group of guys, or would you say you were just before them?
I mean, I was definitely with those guys. Like, when I was starting to play, or when I sort of hit everything, it was with, the only three people that really play anymore that still play are Daniel Negreanu, Phil Hellmuth, and myself. Like, there's very, very, very few people that are still playing at the level that we're playing at today that from back in 2003. It was Doyle Brunson. It was, we had Lane Flag. We had a lot of guys that either passed away, moved on to something else. You know, Poker's changed a lot. They can't make it in today's game. Poker is a lot more difficult than what it was back in the day. Um, but yeah, the ones that are playing from my day that are still relevant and playing are basically those two guys, Phil Hellmuth and Danny Negreanu.
Why do you say it's more difficult today? Just because of the kids and the algorithms and the math and all that stuff?
What's the resources that you have available? Back when I first started playing, they had three books that you could read. You could read Super System, you could read Mike Caro's Book of Tells, and then you could read, there was a satellite book by Tom McAvoy. Those were the three learning materials that you had to learn how to play poker. It was mostly you figuring it out on your own. I mean, I won the main event of the World Series of Poker almost by just check raising people, because most places you couldn't check raise. So I figured, well, hell, if I can check raise in a tournament, I'm do it all the time. And people just gave you mad respect for it. So that was my game plan. I always bet in position. So if people check to me, it generally meant they didn't have it. So I just bet with no matter what I had, and they just always folded. And if I was really strong, I would check raise, and I figured out, well, hell, they're just all folding to me. So I started doing it as I got further when I was weak, not caring as long as they folded. I would just check raise them, and it worked. It was crazy, but it wasn't rocket science. Poker was really really easy back then. Like, I could teach you how to play poker in about an hour, send you to a casino, and I would guarantee you would make money. It was just printing money back in the day. But today you have so many training sites. You got Twitch that you can learn for free. You've got solvers, these bot solvers that teach you the correct play in every single situation. If you want to spend the time and the resources, you can get really, really good at poker, and you can play more hands in a month than Doyle Brinson played in his entire career, and learn so much faster than you could learn back then. And that's why poker's tougher. Now, poker's still beatable because your average player, like if you go to Orange City, for example, you go to Jacksonville and play, you're not going to be facing guys that are spending majority of the time, they're not going to be spending all their time learning how to play poker. They're just going to be playing poker for a hobby, or they're going to spend a little time, they're going to learn enough to make themselves a little dangerous, but they're not going to learn all the nuances and all the things that they need to learn. A lot of people don't want to put the time in, and also it's another thing too is I can sit there and teach you how to play poker, but there's concepts to poker, and everybody understands there's concepts, and you can play GTO, game theory optimal poker, all day long. The problem is GTO poker is not winning poker. GTO poker, game theory optimal poker, is just break even poker. It makes it to where, people like myself, Daniel Negreanu, if we play perfect poker and you're playing perfect poker, we break even. Like, no one wins. It's designed as a tool to where if someone is playing the way they're supposed to play, if they play exactly like a computer does, you can counterbalance them. But once you get good at poker, you start realizing that you want to play exploitably. You want to play to where you're theoretically making mistakes, but you make mistakes to capitalize on your opponent's deficiencies or mistakes. So if you're playing perfect poker, as what the computer would say, I would deviate from that to take advantage of where your mistakes are. One of the prime examples of that is, so there's a hand that's called uh, the solver hand, if you will. It's ace five suited. So if you get ace five suited, the solver tells you to raise in any position. And if you get three bet, it tells you to four bet. If you get five bet, it tells you to shove all in.
Oh,
It's the one hand in poker it tells you just to go crazy with. Mathematically, it covers some aces. It has different draws, different equities. So if you play and you watch a lot of poker tournaments, you'll see a lot of people doing crazy things with ace five suited. So if I know a guy is playing just GTO, I mean obviously you can take hands that you may not normally play, like a hand, some symbols like ace 10. Like ace 10's a fold in a lot of situations when you're playing against a tight player. But if you're playing against a guy that is playing, computer hands GTO, all of a sudden ace 10, you're going to be getting in with, you're going to have the guy dominated. So you can make adjustments. Now, ace 10's, if you go all in with ace 10 a lot, you're going to end up losing. It's going to be a really bad play for you.
hate
But
that
if you
hand.
do it, yeah, you're going to be just burning money. But if you do it against a GTO player, all of a sudden now you're profitable.
See, that's the stuff. Like this, talk about a free lesson. Oh my god, this is just ace 10,
Yeah.
ace 10, queen jack, cash game. Hate them, both of them, both hands. Hate, hate, hate. Unfortunately, lately I've been doing well with both of those hands. So then I'm starting to second guess. Like maybe it's me. But like I'll talk to other players there that play every day. They'll say the same thing about certain hands. I mean, obviously there's different hands you play for a cash game versus a tournament. Again, Chris Moneymaker's tournament coming to Orange City, Florida at the Orange City Poker Room with $700,000 in guarantees, 23 trophy events, December 4th to the 16th, moneymakerpt.com or orangecitypoker.com. And you can see the list of events and then, just your buy-ins and when you want to go. Would you consider your entire poker career, well over 2 decades, right? Professionally. Let's start 2003. So we'll say, over 2 decades of playing professional poker, making a living, paying your bills, ups and
We
downs.
bored the other guy, by the way. He left. We bored
No,
him.
he throws up every once in a while. It's weird.
I get it. No,
He's a weird dude.
if I
So
saw myself, if I saw myself in the mirror like that, I would throw up too.
so Chris, if over 2 decades of being a professional poker player, would you do it all again? Or would you rather go back and win that $8,000 to pay off the credit cards and come back to your home and work as an accountant?
Before I answer that, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You're trying to tell me you're not a good poker player. What is that guitar behind you? Isn't
So that is a replica that was made for me of the Nirvana Vandalism guitar. And above it in that shadow
oh,
box is an
Yeah.
actual brick from Kurt Cobain's house.
No, I'm talking about the guitar behind you. You see that
What?
guitar that's right in your background?
Yeah.
Looks like a Hollywood guitar that you get for winning a poker tournament.
Oh no. The guitar behind me it was made. It's the Nirvana Vandalism guitar. It's a remix.
Okay, so it's not a Hollywood hard rock winning
No,
poker tournament guitar. Okay, it looks
no, no.
exactly like a couple I
He
have. So,
he wishes. He wishes.
Uh, I've won a couple tournaments, but I mean nothing that big. I mean, like
all right, fair enough. I
They
just saw in
give
the
they give
background
him
back there, so I had to
they
check.
give him they give him ukuleles when he wins. That's
I know the guitar you're talking about, but no, that's not it.
It looks really similar to it, but okay. Let's go back to the question. So, would I change? You can take the 8 grand. Not a chance in hell. No. More. Love my life. I've got the one of the greatest life ever. I mean, hell, for the last 20 some odd years, I get to play a game for a living, and I make my own schedule. I do what I want to do. I don't have bills. I have a great family. Like, no, I wouldn't change anything. Everything in life is perfect.
Have you ever felt the that feeling of losing it all? Did you ever go through that?
No, I got divorced after I won, and I gave all the money away. So about 6 months after I won, I was completely broke. But the one thing I did have is I had, a sponsorship deal. I had, I could go and do appearances. I actually kept my job for about 9 months, and then I quit my job after that because I was getting appearances to show up and for a weekend, and I was making. If I did 4 appearances a year, I made more than I made the entire year of work. So, and I had appearances coming out. I mean, I could do appearances every single weekend. So I had income, I had sponsorships, and then, I was learning poker, and I realized that people are just not very good at poker. So I was just going out and I was just printing money. Like, it was insane how much money I was making just playing poker against people that had no clue what they're doing. And they just wanted to come play with me. I had
Mm.
a guy, I was doing an appearance once, and he's like, "Hey, would you play me heads up for 30,000?" And I was like, "Well, I'm here. I'm entertaining people right now. Well, maybe we can do it in here in a little while." And I said, "What would you want the blinds to be?" And he goes, "What are blinds?" And I said, "All right, yes, we can probably do this. Let me get through doing what I'm doing over here, talking to everybody else, and then I'll come and we'll sit down and we'll talk about it." So, fast forward a couple hours, and I go to talk to the guy, and we set up. We're going to play 25-50 for 30,000, just freeze out. And we play for about 15 minutes, and the guy's down $15,000, and he goes, "Hey, I hate to do this, but can we quit? I thought this was going to be, something where we're bluffing back and forth, and we're having a lot of fun, but you just always have the best hand." And I'm like, that's not actually true, but I act like I'm betting like I have the best hand when I know he's going to fall. Whatever. I was like, yeah, that's fine. We can quit. No big deal. But again, I would have these people coming up to me and just be challenging me. It's like, people wanted to punch Mike Tyson in the face or get punched by Mike Tyson for whatever reason. Like, seems like the dumbest idea in the world, but people want talk about doing it. Would you take a punch from Mike Tyson for $100,000 or whatever it is? Well,
Right.
people for whatever reason just wanted to play me heads up, and
No.
like that's just not very smart if you don't know what you're doing.
What are the blinds? All right, let me ask you this, Chris Moneymaker. Being a professional poker player for all these years, you've been at numerous tables, you've played numerous types of people. What's the most annoying person at a poker table?
The guy, well, there's two types of annoying people. One that whines about every bad beat that he takes and wants to tell you about it. Hey, I just had aces this last tournament, and you won't believe what happened. I'm like, I promise you, I'll believe you what happened. Like, it's happened to all of us. If you play poker long enough, you've heard all forms of bad beat stories. So, um, that's the first kind, is the guy that will constantly tell you how bad they're running, how unlucky they are. Um, you know, at the end of the day, if you really think about it, and if the guy's honest with himself, you're really not that unlucky. You're probably just not very good, and you make bad decisions. And yes, when you get your aces with 10 big blinds, they get cracked. But you did a lot of things to get yourself down to 10 big blinds. A lot of times that's probably something you could have controlled.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so people complaining about bad beats. That's something no poker player wants to hear you complain about your unfortunate bad beats, and because we've all experienced them, we all have them. It's just part of the game. The other one is the guy that always teaches someone at the table. Someone will make a mistake, and they'll belittle them or try to teach them what they did wrong. And these people don't come around as much as they used to, but you used to see him all the time, and it's funny because I'd be sitting at the table and someone would be like, "Oh yeah, you played that hand really bad. You should have checked on the turn or whatever." And most of the time, the advice is really bad. First of all, second of all, like no one wants to hear, like they just lost a hand. They don't want to hear how they played it bad. They're
Right.
already pissed that they lost. Now they're going to have some smart guy try to explain to them why they lost. So I would say that's probably the two most annoying people at the table.
What is the most amount of money you've lost in one cash game hand?
Oh wow. You would think I would actually know this by heart, but I'm not sure. I think trying to remember the biggest hand I ever lost. I guess that's one good thing about me. I can remember a lot of the hands I win. I'm like a quarterback in football. When I throw an interception or I lose a hand, I just kind of forget about it. I know my
Goldfish.
Yeah, my biggest losing session, I think I lost like 70,000 in a
Oh,
day. I don't remember the hand, but I know I lost 70,000 in a day.
oh,
Um, but yeah, I mean, I remember the hands I won. Like, I remember one of the biggest hands I ever won was against Ben Affleck. That was pretty cool. And I remember my biggest winning days and some of the hands in that session, but I don't really remember the losing hands in my bad sessions.
was the Ben Affleck a private game or was that a celebrity thing or what?
It was at the Palms Casino. It was just it was down there when Palms had a poker room, and um, it was back during when all the FHM and Maxim and it had all these after parties during the World Series. We would always have these private celebrity games back in the back corner, back at Palms, and it would be a bunch of celebrities playing, and myself and a couple, maybe one or two other pros, and we would just be playing. We'd play, 24 hours, and it would be a crazy game, but it'd be fun.
All right. So you're sitting at a table. It's Chris Moneymaker to hand against Ben Affleck. And it's the most money you've ever won in the cash game hand. What are you holding on the river? What is he holding on the river? And what is the payout?
All right, so to set the hand up, so Ben at the time, like Ben ended up being a pretty good poker player, but back at the time he was just atrocious. He raised every single hand pre-flop. Like didn't matter what two cards he had, he always raised pre-flop. So if you're playing deep, and we're both playing about 60,000 deep. So if you're playing deep, you're trying to see as many flops as you can with him because you know you're going to outplay him. Because at the time, what he always did, if he connected with the flop in any way, he would bet, and if he missed, he would always check. It was face up. It was that easy. Um, so he raised, and I called with Queen four. Wasn't suited or anything. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's like Queen four, and so the flop comes like ace 10 3, and he checks, and I decided to check behind. I don't have a ton of equity. He doesn't let go of hands too often, so um but I know when he checks he doesn't really have anything. A four comes on the turn, and it ends up making me a pair, and he ends up leading out. He had queen four. What do I say? He had queen four. You think I would remember this by this time of day? I ended up turning a flush draw, so I
Uh,
had like I think it was 9 7 of spades or something, and the four spades came on the turn, putting a flush draw out there, and he bet on the turn, which almost always guarantees he's going to have a four in this spot. And another spade hit on the river, and he went for a big bet on the river, and I decided to move all in, and he thought about it forever, and I guess he just didn't feel like I had it, and contemplating. I mean, I'd have had a nine high flush, or And I didn't know what he had obviously, but I felt like if he's gonna have anything super strong, he would have been on the flop. Whatever he didn't. He thought forever and finally called it off. And he's like, I said, I have a flush. He's like, oh, you have a flush? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, no, good hand. And mucked his hand and moved on and just rebought like nothing happened. But to me at the time, it was the biggest hand I had ever played. Now that's not the case anymore. I mean, I've played on the high stakes poker and won like 400,000 last year. So
Yeah.
that kind of shattered my record of uh, having the biggest hand.
Who were some of the best celebrity poker players? I know Lou Diamond Phillips is a big poker player. Toby Maguire. I think he's the character after Molly's Game, if memory serves, right?
Player X.
Yeah,
Yeah,
player
Player
X.
X.
And
Yeah.
yeah, but I know I have a buddy that used to live out in LA. He was an actor, played in a game with Lou Diamond Phillips a lot. He said he's a good player.
Well, I haven't played with Lou Diamond Phillips. I played with James Woods quite a bit. He's a pretty solid player. He's not bad. Toby Maguire, when I played with him, he wasn't very good. It was back in the Ben Affleck days. He wasn't very good. He would. It was funny when he played. He could have 10,000 in front of him, and if it was all big chips, he played really tight. If it was all small chips, like small denominations, he became real splashy and started playing just tons of pots. So it was always easy to tell, what mood he was in based on how many chips he had in front of him. It could be the same denomination, but it was just how many. Again, if he had all $1,000 chips, he would play super super tight. But if he had $25 chips, piles of them, he would just be in there splashing every hand. It's kind of weird dynamic, but I heard that he got really, really good, and therefore became Player X in Molly's Game. Leonardo DiCaprio, he plays, but he doesn't play a whole lot. But he's a pretty decent player. I mean, he'll put pressure on you. I'll tell you that. Like he's not afraid to put pressure on you. Ben Affleck again was terrible back in the day, but he got pretty decent. He actually won the California State Poker Championship.
Hmm.
I guess everybody knows Jennifer Tilly plays quite a bit. She ended up marrying, or was I don't know if they're actually married. I think they're just together with the Unabomber Phil Lack.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say, Toby Maguire, James Woods, those are probably the more accomplished, celebrity players. But Kevin Hart, he's dabbled into poker. Neymar's dabbled, um, and they don't take it real seriously. But
What about Kevin Pollock? You ever play with him?
Kevin Pollak takes it serious. He
Yeah.
does a lot of the charity poker tours, tournaments. He doesn't, play a lot of the big cash games and stuff like that, but he'll play in the celebrity poker tournaments, and he does really well in those.
I love Kevin Pollock. I love him as an actor. I've interviewed him numerous times. I love his honesty. He's outspoken. I love when he talks about his hatred for Bill Paxton, I believe it is. It's just like the guy's just, I mean, like he's not your typical Hollywood guy. He's very, very cool. Did you, Chris, ever play in one of those games that Molly put on from the movie Molly's Game?
I played in a game out there. It was at a director's house, but it wasn't Molly's Game. It was we played up in the Hollywood Hills, and I played with. That's where I played with Leonardo DiCaprio and the guy that owns Disney Katzenberg or whatever. It was a very exclusive high end game, but it was not Molly's Game. I never played Molly's Game. I never came out to LA during that time, or New York, or wherever the game was.
Did you have to sign an NDA to play with these people?
Nope, just got to show up.
You just got to show up. Was there
Yeah.
like armed security? I mean, that's a lot of money in a room.
Nothing. Just it was out of not just a random Hollywood Hills. Now I would say there's security around just being that where we were, but they had professional chef and they had professional dealers, professional masseuses. I'm sure there might have been security somewhere, but they did a really good job of making you feel like it's not there. I guess it was very comfortable. We
Yeah.
played in. It was basically a glass house overlooking the California Valley or whatever. It's pretty cool.
Did you ever play with a guy named Bond, James Bond?
You need to go back and throw up again.
No, I'm just kidding. I do got a good question though. There's a lot of decision making in poker and everything. I mean, that's pretty much the whole game. I don't know a lot about it, but I know that involves it. But how has decision making in poker maybe changed your life and decisions you make in life? Has it altered any, or has it helped you?
I mean, I guess I've always been kind of a guy that sits back and wait and doesn't make any rash decisions. I'm not going to be a guy that's going to make snap decisions. If I have a big decision to make, I'll think about it, and usually pretty practical with most financial decisions. And poker, again, you'll see people make snap rash decisions all the time, and they're usually wrong. You got to have a game plan going in when you're playing poker. You got to, each player, you kind of get an idea of how they play, so you make a game plan for it, and then you have to adjust that game plan based on how they're running. Are they running bad, running good? Because again, if they're running bad, you start playing more hands with them because they're going to be a little bit more spewy a lot of times. You see how people react. So in doing that with life, I mean, first of all, you don't take every opportunity that comes your way. I'm very selective with the businesses I do and the opportunities I take. And then I have a pretty good understanding, unless it's a woman, of if someone's lying to me. I honestly, my wife could probably lie to me and I would have no freaking idea. But I play mostly with guys, and I can usually tell when guys are lying. Women, I still can't tell. If I play with a woman in poker, outside, there was this one girl I could tell. But outside, most of the time when I play with a woman, I have no idea what she's doing. But I was on a final table of a WPT event, and there was a girl sitting to my left. She would look at her cards, and every time she looked at her cards, if she didn't have anything, she would look up and just start looking around, looking at the room, whatever. Every time she was going to play her hand, she would look at her hand and look straight ahead, like just a statue. She would stare straight forward. So I always knew if she had a hand or not before I got to make a decision. That's really the only woman I can ever think of where I knew what was going on before, in the hand. But guys, yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to tell when a guy is lying a lot of times.
Yeah, God, it's almost like you have these, once you play poker around people and you read people, like it's FBI profiling, stuff like Chuck you used to do when you worked for Homeland Security. Like you do it enough times, it becomes a superpower. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, there are things you look for, and there are tendencies that people do. One of the things, so like when a poker player looks for someone that's bluffing, um, we I me personally, I always look for something you're going to do every single time in the hand. So one thing you always do is you always look at your cards. So when you look at your cards, everybody does something different. If you get aces, for example, a lot of times people will look at aces and put them down immediately and not go back and look at them and just look very innocent, like, oh, nothing to see here. They'll sit up in their chair a little bit and try to act, nonchalant. If they have a really trash hand, they'll usually look at it real fast and put it right back down, but they're like kind of bored or disinterested in the hand. And but again, people do switch sometimes, but you can pick up these patterns on people. And there are a lot of times that like the girl, she'll look straight ahead. People will put their chip protector on their card if they're going to play. If they're not going to play, they won't. They'll
Right.
pick up their cards like they're going to muck before it's their time to act.
Yeah.
So you start piecing together your hand from pre-flop, and then as you start playing the hand, you start putting the story together of, okay, well, this guy was, not that strong pre-flop, and now the flop comes out like ace king. Well, that doesn't really make sense for his betting. Like what is he trying to represent here? And then you start looking at his jugular vein, or how where he's looking, he won't look at you, or he's leaned up in his chair. Everybody's a little bit different, so there's not one like dead giveaway, but usually, like, so if someone's like super helpful, like, trying to tell you, I will bet $550, and they're really just trying to assist you on how big their bet is, they generally just don't have it.
Yeah.
So someone just puts a bet out there and, nondescript, and, again, everybody's a little bit different, but if you play with someone long enough, you start picking up on these small little tells, if you will. They're not really tells, but they're just little things that, make you question, okay, well, why do you bet bigger here? You know, people bet bigger with different hands. If I have aces and I three bet you pre, I might do it bigger than if I had like king seven or ace five or whatever that hand might be. And you start picking up on these patterns, and then you start picking up on, you know, how often someone stares around the table and is paying attention versus when they're on their phone or watching the football game. And you just start noticing different things. You'll see people on their phone all the time, and all of a sudden they'll get a hand, their phone will go down. It's like, okay, now you have a hand, you're going to play.
Right.
And it's but in the first 20, 30 minutes, people think about it all the time. Like, they're very structured with how they look at their hands and how they play the game. But after that, people get lazy and they just start
Yeah.
doing random shit that they don't pay attention to. And all of a sudden now it's like, oh, okay, well, you did this, you did that, you did this. Oh, you must have, this type hand. And you start piecing it together. And again, it's not really like, not voodoo science. I mean, it's all about observation. It's all about, picking up these subtle little things that if you pay attention to people, you'll see it.
Yeah.
So it's
I,
not like it's,
I
I'm
think
watching someone breathing.
I think poker, I've got OCD, like not the worst case scenario, but I do have I got a touch of the tism with the OCD. And I actually found that it's good for the things that you're talking about, like for my chip protector. I do the same thing every hand, no matter if I'm going to play it or not, whether it's aces or 2-3 offsuit. I go through the same motion. I get my cards. I wait till I don't look at them until it's my turn to act. I look at them. If I'm going to play, I bet, raise, whatever, put my chip protector on. And then when the flop comes out, then I look at them again. So I'm doing the same thing every time. I'm not doing anything different. I don't.
Your chips are all lined up nice and neat. You got them all stacked up perfect.
Yeah.
So, yep. So you're going to be a guy that just doesn't bluff very much. You're
Yeah,
gonna
right.
It's going to be hard for you to bluff, and you're going to be a person that you're not going to be overly inquisitive. So I can bluff you. Um, immediately when I sit down at a table and I see someone that has their chips in perfect stacks, and a lot of times the little lines up perfectly because they're OCD.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a person I know that you're just never really going to bluff me that much, and you're going to have to prove otherwise.
So funny you say that. Is yes, yes, and yes. And I've noticed that people, yes, yes, and yes. So I've started to force myself to get out of routine, but only in
Perfect.
position. I'll give you an example. This guy was owning me last night, absolutely owning me. And I know he bluffed me he didn't show me. Nice guy, good player, but I just knew it. I felt it. So I said, look, I've got to start playing some hands outside of my realm. So I decided to play 4-5 suited diamonds in like mid position or something. And he had raised pre-flop. And I was like, you know what? And we were playing a 2-5 game. So the raise was like $30. It was like 3 or 4 callers. I was like, why not? So I get out there, I get 2 diamonds on the flop with an 8 high. So he's got top pair, not knowing that at the time. He bets pretty big. And I was like, okay, I don't believe him. Even though he did have top pair. So I called, it was like $100. I called the $100. The turn is another 8. Again, not knowing now that he's got a set of 8s. So I'm like, I just have this, I'm playing this till the river. I just don't believe this dude, and I'm hitting my flush. That's all I said to myself. That's what's going to happen. I thought it into existence. The river, a diamond. He throws out $450, which, it's pretty big, right? For me. And so I was
What did
like,
he bet on the turn?
he didn't bet on the turn. That's the thing. He didn't bet on the turn.
Yeah. So
He bet.
check. I got you. Okay.
Yeah, he bet on the flop. He checked on the turn, then he bets big on the river. So, and I called him and I got it. And he was like, I didn't see that coming. I was like, I know, that's why I did it. To your point of reading people, you know what I mean? And he was a guy that his chips were all messy and all that kind of stuff, and that kind of thing. So he was a loose player. And I
also to my point, when you're talking about going for value, like with your 4-5, you didn't raise them. Like, you have a flush. It's really hard to lose that hand. Like, that's a hand that you can raise for value, but people just won't. So when you have that hand, like, you could have raised the river and got value, but people just don't do it. Like, you're just going to call there. So again, like, if you're being afraid to go for value, just realize you might get called, but you're not getting raised.
So even with 2 8s out there, him possibly having a full house or a bigger flush, still raise?
I'm not saying you have to raise in this spot. It just depends on the player. But I'm saying that, you were talking about earlier on about you being afraid to bet on the river because you're going to get raised. And that's one of your biggest fears.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you just made a flush on the river and you didn't raise, like, because
Yeah.
there's the potentially that you could be beat. Most people, unless they have the stone nuts, aren't going to raise you. They're just going to flat a lot of times, especially if you put a big bet out there.
Right.
So again, it's so infrequent that someone's going to raise you on the river. That's why you just always just go for as much value as possible.
So everybody's hearing the advice that Chris Moneymaker is giving me now. When I play this Moneymaker tournament in Orange City at the poker room, and I'm sitting across from Chris, and we're just us two at the end, final table, and I'm taking his advice, and he knows it, and I raise, and he knows I'm going to raise, and then he's going to re-raise me, put me all in, and win his own damn tournament because the advice he gave me during this interview. That's what's going to happen. It's a work. It's a work. I'm telling you, you're working me right now, Chris.
So I used to do a boot camp back in the day for WPT, and one of the things I always tell people is when you sit down at a poker table, people aren't going to tell, like, when you're playing in a hand, people aren't going to tell you much information about them. But I like to show up early and meet people and find out what they do. Like, and people will tell you their entire life story. They'll tell you, I just flew in from Florida. I play poker. I was just in Cherokee. I was just in there. I travel around the country playing poker professionally. Or, I'm a carpet salesman and this is what I do on my free time. They'll tell you their life story and you basically find out, this $1,500 tournament's a massive tournament for them, or this is a regular Tuesday for them, and they don't care if, they're going to rebuy if they bust. And they'll give you all this information just from talking with you. So we get done with our little seminar, and I go. It was a seminar, and then we had a tournament afterwards. And so there was about 30 people in the seminar, and we went out, and there's like 200 people. This was at Daytona Beach. I go, and I'm sitting at Daytona Beach, and the guy to my left. I usually start with the guy to my left because that's the most dangerous person at the table. So I'm talking to this random guy that just sits down, and this little old lady, about 80 years old, comes over in the middle of my conversation. And he goes, "Young man, don't say anything to him. He is not your friend. He is trying to get information from you." I'm like, she just blew up my spot because she was listening to me in my seminar, and I was going to go do the exact thing I told her what I was going to do, and she heard me doing it, and so she gave the guy a warning not to talk to me. It was wrong.
You remember
I
her
wouldn't do that.
name by any chance?
I don't. I don't.
'Cause
There's no
I
chance.
think I have a feeling I know who you're talking about. That's funny.
Well,
Well, back in the Daytona days, before Orange City was built, when I worked at the radio station at Real Radio, we used to have Thursday night tournaments, and every once in a while, they'd bring in some of the pros, like they brought in Moon, they brought in
Raymer, Maria Ho came in. I know. Just Jamie Kerstetter came in. Yeah, I mean, I was one of the groups they brought in during that time.
Yeah, Eston David, the magician guy. They brought him in.
I think he froze.
The Eston Defari, how do you say his name? The magician or what? That guy.
That's Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
he came in, and I remember I just started playing 2-5 at the time, and I sat down at a table with Moon, and he had just I think he was 2 years off of. Did he win or came in? He won the WSOP or something. Nicest guy. Yeah, nicest guy in the world. Nicest guy. And it wasn't even intimidating to play at the table with him, even getting in a hand. It was just, like you said, just another dude, but just the sweetest guy, man. He was so nice. And I find that about most, I lost you there, Chris, your internet lost them. But I find that about most of these poker players. They're just nice people, but it's a work, I mean, they're getting information from you. So I'm going to have to do the same thing, during this tournament. I'll have to get the information. I'm going to have to roll Chris.
You've been telling us. Jason's been telling us all the time about how he goes to the poker table and meets all these good guys and everything. They're all his good friends, but I think they're working you now. Now that I hear Chris talking, I think all these buddies at the poker table are just working your ass up there. They're just taking your money.
They wouldn't do that to you. I would be your friend.
Yeah. Well,
you're invited to sit at my table.
Yeah, but I'm I'm networking. I just opened up an ozone therapy spa, so I'm trying to sit there and get some business to come out and do some of the stuff to come out to the spa. And so I've got to have these conversations, and there's no doubt. I mean, look, when it's all said and done, everybody's there to make money. Have a good time, make money, and all that good stuff. They'll be nice and cordial for the most part. Like the guys that are the dicks at the poker table, those are the guys that I like because I said this the other day. I said, if I ever get in an argument or a fight at a poker table, just put a pencil in my ear. Like, that's absurd. I don't know that guy. If you don't affect my life, the food that I put on the table for my family or how I breathe, I'm not going to waste energy in getting upset with you because you say something to me at a poker table. That's absurd. You know what I mean? But that's just, I have a fairly thick skin. Now, there's a poker game that I played in, Chris, that I don't even think you'd play in. And there's a guy that can explain it better, and his name's Chuck. These poker tournaments that he puts on with his buddies, these guys are playing for not the small, but the big pretzels. I mean, these things are badass.
We ain't got your kind of money, man. I mean, he said he's done these before. You're playing for like $5, $10 at the end of the night when you're just trying to go home. And then, everyone looks at their clock and they're like, dude, it's 11 o'clock. I got to get out of here. I'm all in. And we just play one final hand and winner take all. It's a great game. And there's a lot of skill involved.
I think there's a difference between $5 or $10 and pretzels on the table.
Yeah, he's just being an idiot. We play for, like, you start the night for the first hour, it's $1, $2. And then after that, it goes to like $2.5.
No, that's not how it started. It started when you invited me, you're like 25, 50. I said, I'm not coming over unless you do 1, 2. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, we right? raised it for you that night. We went crazy for you.
Chris, am I
Maybe
right?
Maybe it is you, Jason.
You want to, if you're going to play, you want to have something at stake, right? A little something. Am I right?
You can have bragging rights. I mean, hell, I love beating people just for bragging rights.
Yeah. See, Jason doesn't understand that you can actually do things for fun.
You're right. I don't. You are correct there, sir. I do not.
When I went to Jason's house and played a poker tournament, I was up like $100-something, and I was like, "Hey, man, I gotta go." He got mad. He got so mad. He's like, "Why are you leaving?" I was like, "Dude, it's like 11:30. I gotta drive an hour." "Oh, you're stupid. You just come over here and win. Now you think you can leave?" I'm like, "Dude, I felt like I was like it was something like there was
something broke the code.
Like security was there's
that's the poker code. You can't hit and run.
Right?
I did.
Yeah. You thought you were going to get Moneymaker on your side, and he just called you out. Said you're a punk. That's what.
Well, my best friend came to my club last week at our grand opening, and he played. He's never played poker at all. He sat down and he won $1,500 like right away.
Wow.
And then he's like, just basically, I taught him how to play 3 minutes before, and he ran like God. He just woke up with monster hands and made like $1,500 in no time at all. Then he did what you did. He's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna get out of here. My wife is not feeling very well, and so everybody at the table's like, what the fuck? He's like, man, he doesn't. But everybody. So we played played something like it's a double board bomb pot. If you've ever played, it's a PLO hand. It's 2 hands. So I say, so now we're gonna play a double board bomb pot, and he goes, what are boards? I'm like, all right. Yeah, I try to quickly explain to him. So the first board came out ace, 9, or ace, 5. And I said, so if you have like an ace 5 in your hand, that's good. And the next board came out 9, 7. So I said, so like if you have 9, 7 right now, it's good. If you have any of those combinations of cards, you kind of want to say them. I'm telling this out loud at the poker table. Like the whole table can hear me explaining how to play the hand. And he goes, how much can I bet? So he bets the pot, and 2 people for whatever reason stays in with them. And we get down to the end, and he has exactly ace 5 and 9, 7 in his hand. But then he shows his ace 5 because Chris said I can only play 2 in my hand. And so he doesn't realize he gets to play 2 on each board, whatever. So he scoops the whole thing, and then he says, you know what? I think it's time for me to go. Yeah. People were pissed, but at the same time, they understood that guy has zero idea what he's doing. So they weren't too upset. But you should know better. You can't leave for the $100 and walk out on with Jason like that. You don't do that again.
Thank you, Chris.
He doesn't invite me anymore.
Well,
that's why. That's a subtle hint.
We got to play for another 9 hours. I don't care, Chuck. 9 more hours.
We have a rule. We have a rule in our home game. If you come in and you're up, you can't leave for 5 hours.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, there you go. That's good. So
and if it's Jason coming, 10 hours.
Yeah. But Orange City and Daytona, they do the bomb pots. I haven't stepped into the PLO world yet. Everybody
I can teach you that when I come down. It's awesome. You'll love that.
Yeah. Everybody says once you that's a very expensive lesson to learn. But everybody that went from No Limit says once you do that, you don't go back. and it's no limits, just boring once you go PLO.
It's true. I mean, once you start playing PLO, you don't want to play Hold'em anymore, and it is a very expensive game.
Yeah.
So the bankroll has to be there. But from an action standpoint, like you get to play so many hands
Yeah.
versus Hold'em. I mean, it's a very much a flop game. Hold'em is more of a pre-flop. Your two cards are very important. Where in Omaha, uh, most of the hands are made on the flop. So, you can see a lot more flops and a lot more. You have a lot more options.
Yeah. I want to sit down at a table and like say, okay, I'm willing to lose $1,000 just to learn, but
Sounds good to me.
yeah.
No, I mean,
Basically, that's just paying for training, pretty much.
that's what it's called. That's really the best way to learn is just get there, do it, and learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, well, that's what I tell people. Like when I lived in Georgia, there were poker games that I started playing in right before I left the state. Because gambling's illegal in Georgia, that. But
I do know.
there are some good, rounder type of games, in some places people would have, and good action too. But my wife and I, and she's an enabler, so we would go up to Murphy in North Carolina, and we had a cabin in Mineral Bluff. And so, you'd get a lot of the Tennessee folk that come over to Murphy too. And I love Mississippi Stud, the carnival game. And I would sit there for, just hours. And you talk about a game, when I would try to teach people that game, I say, look, it's a guaranteed $400 membership fee. Plan on losing $400 at least. And then you'll understand it. But you can make it back literally in one hand. So you just have to stick in there. It's a grinder carnival game where you actually supposedly have like a 2.7% advantage over the house if you're a poker player, and you play.
There's no way you have an edge over anything in the casino. They would never spread a game that they're a dog in.
Well, casinos are getting rid of Mississippi Stud for whatever reason. I don't know why. Like we just
I don't play any of the pit games, so I don't know. I don't even know how to play Mississippi Stud, but I find it hard to believe that any casino would ever put in a game that they're negative EV.
Well, it's like so you get two whole cards. You have an ante and then 3 betting lines. It's pretty much let it ride in reverse. So in each betting line, you can triple your bet. And 6 is the 10 push, Jackson above pay, 1-1, 1-2, 3-1, so on and so forth. And so you get 3 community cards. So you're not playing against anyone. You're just trying to make a pair or better. And so, if you play the odds, like if you have Jack 6, okay, you've got a pay card and a push card. Why not see a card? But if you've got 5-4, why are you going to play that? You're looking for a miracle. So that's where I think the advantage comes in. And plus, once you see the first card, if you don't have, you can do the point system. If you don't have 9 outs after the first card, I always fold. So I'm a very conservative player. It might come, but the odds are in my favor, so I get out. I think that's
we get back to the whole you being a nit and you don't bluff. But go ahead. Sorry.
That's just how I play. That's just how I play.
Fair enough.
With Chris, with all the pros that you've played against over all these years, who do you feel that you can read the best?
I mean, I don't know if I want to say that on air. I'll tell you who I don't like playing against is Eric Seidel. Eric Seidel is a beast. Like he gives me a ton of fits and a lot of problems. I do have a lot of tells on a lot of different pros, but I don't really want to divulge them because I play with a lot of them still, and I don't want to. That is very vital information. Whenever you get a tell on somebody, you just never give it up because that's printing money, and especially in the games that I play in, you'll see things and like if you go watch me on TV, there are things that I do. If you pick up on, you can pick up on. I've got tells on people. And I try to talk to them and get them out of them. And there's a specific hand here recently that I talked and got someone up the information I wanted out of the hand and immediately called him. Probably to my detriment. I probably should have waited and not acted on it so fast because I think I gave away what I was looking for when I found it. I said I call right away. And I kicked myself for doing it because I let him know that that's the reason. I called so fast that he kind of had to know that he made a mistake telling me what he told me. So I generally don't give away my information on actual players. I'll
Really?
talk about general tells all day long, but when it comes to actual tells on players that I play against all the time, like I'll tell you that girl's tell, staring straight forward. I'll tell you down in Uruguay, I was playing on a final table, and a guy was going to fold his hand. He held it up every time, so it was easy to fold. But players that I'm actively playing against all the time, yeah, I'm going to keep those to myself.
Yeah, that's tough. Being in a business, this is how you make your money, and then being a celebrity on television, and they want to publicly televise what you do when you hold a lot of secrets. You know what I mean? So you have to, over the years, go from this blue collar guy of playing poker with the fellas to not only a professional poker player to learn the business, but you have to learn the hustle side of things as well, right?
No, well, yeah, you got to learn that you don't play the same way on TV as you do in real life, like in cash. You'll watch some of the guys that play on TV that only play on TV periodically. Well, watch them on TV, and they make a lot of ambitious calls. They'll give action, and they'll advertise almost that they're a loose player. But then you go play with them in a normal game, and they're the biggest rocks you've ever seen. They never play a hand, but they've advertised on TV because people watch on TV and they go, "Oh, this guy's crazy. He's loose. He'll do anything." And then you go play with them. It's like, wait a minute, this isn't the same guy. This guy's doing something completely different than what he did on TV. There's a lot of players that won't play on TV. Like Phil Ivey hates playing on TV. He almost like will. Oh, that's another guy that's still around. Obviously, Phil Ivey. I forgot about him, but he hates playing on TV. Like he'll do anything he can to get out of it. Back in the day, Doyle Brunson and those guys, they almost always said they didn't want to play on TV because they didn't want people to find out their secrets, to find out what they were doing. This is back before there was obviously a lot of resources, but yeah, people were very secretive about you know how they played their hands and why they did the things that they did.
But they realized there's a Phil Hellmuth story that I've heard that the character that he plays on television, the heel, the dick, and all these things is not who he really is in real life, which I believe. Is that not
Who told
true?
you that?
Is that not true?
Well, first of all, he is who he is, but he's very competitive on the felt. Um, First of all, he's a super nice guy. Like even on the table, like when he's doing his shtick, he's not really being a dick to anybody. He berates himself more than anything else. Now he will berate some people, but at the end of the day, he actually gives a lot of money to charity. He's a super nice guy, but he's very insecure and he wants to be the greatest ever.
Yeah.
And so he wants you to believe that he's the greatest ever. And if you don't, then he'll get upset. But what he does on TV, that's his personality. That's him. But that's more insecurity than anything else. But off the table when he's not playing for something, yeah, no, he's a super nice guy. Gives a lot of money away to charity, gives a lot of his time away. Super, super guy. It's funny because whenever I play with him, he never blows up at anybody. I've only seen it does seem like he does it more for TV, but that is his personality. I mean, he is that way. It's not an act per se. Like that's just who he is.
Right. Well, my point is that, with the TV boom for poker players, you had to develop a character, WWE style, right?
It does help.
The more likable or unlikable you are, the good versus evil. Star Wars wouldn't exist without Darth and Luke, right? You need God and the devil. That's what makes everything go round. So you have to have these different characters, and maybe there was somebody behind the curtain pulling those strings and saying, "All right, Negrano, you're going to play the heel or the baby face. Doyle, you're the."
I think that's just people, and then you look at today's game, and that's why poker's kind of died off. Is because you have these guys that just wear hoodies and hats and sunglasses and sit there, and they're robots. They don't really have a personality to them a lot of times, and that's hurt the game a lot.
Yeah. You look at the World Series of Poker now, and they're all nerds. I mean, they're just, they don't know how to communicate because they grew up in a texting era. They don't know how to talk to each other, and they're very thin skinned. It's just, it's a generational thing, you know.
I agree, and that's why you don't see poker on TV much, and that's why
Yeah.
people like me, Negreanu, Helmuth, like we're still, I would say, to this day, we're still the biggest poker stars out there. Like, you'll see some of these YouTube guys come up and they'll do well, but like when it comes to the biggest names in poker, it's still the guys from my generation. Like, you'll see you'll have some people pop up. You'll have Dwan or Polk or somebody pop up, but for the most part, we're still the biggest names back from 20 years ago.
Well, even with Dwan, he was at the tail end of that,
Yeah, I mean, he was 2007, 2008, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's not one of these like 21-year-old kids that played in this last
But he
World
also had a good personality too, and he was fun to watch. He wasn't a robot, and he was creative, and again, he had not so much a personality, but his playing style was very unique.
Yeah. Chuck, do you have a question for Chris before we let him go here in a little bit?
Yeah. Hey, Chris, the only thing I got, I try not to play in illegal poker games, but it happens. You obviously, people know who you are. Do law enforcement ever just follow you around trying to figure out where the action's at to take you down?
Not really. No, never at all, actually. Usually if the law enforcement's there, they're playing in the game.
Yeah.
So if you come to Georgia, I mean, I'm guessing, do you ever play in non-sanctioned events anymore? Like illegal events, like my house events?
If you're playing, fuck no, you're gonna take $100 and run. But
At his own house. All right, guys, I gotta go.
Be knocking on your fucking bedroom door. Give me my 100. Where's my $2? So, I've played in Georgia. I've played in non-sanctioned games before in Georgia. I play wherever there's a good game. Where we played in Hollywood, those were not sanctioned games. Those were the off the those weren't legal games. So, but that's part of being a poker player. I mean, there's plenty of places now where you can play legal poker, and there's so many venues. But like I play a game here in town where I live every Monday night at someone's house. And we have a casino 20 miles from us, but the casino doesn't let us side bet and do all these other they don't do bomb pots, they don't do the things that we like to do in our game, and so we play at home instead of going to the casino.
What casino is that?
What? Tunica.
Oh, okay. Are you where? I thought you're in Tennessee, right?
I'm in Mississippi now. I'm basically 5 miles from Tennessee. I live just south of Tennessee. We moved out into the country, get away, get some land, and
Yeah.
I don't have to go into work anywhere, so we just live out in the middle of nowhere.
Murphy just put in a poker room, I heard.
Murphy? Where the hell's Murphy?
South North Carolina, on the border, Georgia, up by Blue Ridge, Georgia.
A casino did?
Yeah, it's a Harrah's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So Cherokee's got their poker room, of course.
Yep.
And you probably had you mentioned it, so you've had the Moneymaker tour up there. They have the WSOP that runs through WPT and all that stuff. But now Murphy, which is they built that, I guess 8-9 years ago. It's gotten bigger over the years. Obviously, they put a sports book in there a couple years back, and they just opened up a poker room. So yeah.
Well, I've tried to open, and I looked at opening in Atlanta. I'm sure if you guys from there, Little Kings and Queens, they had a little place there.
Yeah.
They got shut down. So
Yeah.
I did a lot of poking around with local laws to see what was legal, what wasn't, and
Yeah.
I just determined it wasn't worth the risk. I mean, that how things are done there, it's too tough to put in a place.
If you ever want to pursue that, because for the years that I did radio in Atlanta, I talked about it all the time. The one person that would be on your side is Representative Ron Stevens out of Savannah. He has been, and I got to sell if you need it. He has for years tried to get gambling legalized. And I always said when I was in Georgia, I was like, look, I'm not talking about Vegas style where you got slots in every gas station. I'm talking about resort style, where you're bringing jobs, making it classy, do what the Hard Rock's done here in Florida. That's why, the only reason you got poker rooms in Florida is because of the pari-mutuel thing. And they've loosened up, I guess, the laws over the years, because now these card rooms, they have the carnival games, but the dealer can't handle the chips. You got to have that side person that works for a third party company.
Player bank. Yep.
Yeah. So, but if the Hard Rock is a monopoly on the casinos, and it's classy. They've got concerts, they've got events, they've got pool, they got food, they got restaurant, they got hotel, they got everything. That's great. Do the same thing in Atlanta. Why not? There's plenty of places to do it. Augusta's a great place. Savannah's a great place. The city of Atlanta, maybe not, but you do have locations around the metro, OTP outside the perimeter that would be perfect for it. You know what I mean? So
I agree, and I'm not the first one to think about it. Obviously, there's a lot of people in Georgia. I mean, I've talked with a really good poker player down in Atlanta. You probably know who he is. That we talked about doing something, and it's just the laws down there are tough.
Yeah, because you got that old South mentality, So that's never, like, Florida's not the South. Georgia's the true South. That's never going to change.
Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama. Yeah, that's the South.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Real quick, I always see, like, when Scotty Scheffler, when he was doing good this past season, it says when I go back home and play with my buddies, I give them a good bit of handicap and whatnot to, make it even. When you play with your buddies, do you do anything to make it a little even or make it different stakes in the game?
So the only thing we had a home game with my friends maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and I played with one card. That was about the best handicap I could give them. I was like, listen, guys, all right, I got 2 cards, but I can only look at one. I got 2 cards like everybody else, but I could only physically look at one card. So they dealt me my card. I looked at it, and the other card had to stay, buried. And we played that way for hours. And that's the only handicap.
How bad they felt when you won. Like, that just makes it worse. Like,
I
when
got
you
third.
lose.
I didn't win. I got third. But they were still kind of laughing that, how in the world are they losing to me when, I got one card. But there's a famous story where this girl, Annette Orwestad or whatever, she covered her cards on her computer and played the entire tournament blind without looking at her cards. Now it's a lot easier when people don't know that you're looking at your cards, but when you're sitting there, you're playing, and everybody knows you can only look at one card. It definitely makes it a lot more difficult. I mean, the spots that you can take are definitely it's a lot harder than you think. So,
I'm sure.
but yeah, I was beating some of them, and they're like, "This is stupid." Like, I'm still getting beat.
Hey, have you ever caught anyone cheating at a table, and specifically cheating because they knew that they were playing against Chris Moneymaker?
Not for that reason, but I've caught people cheating, and I called them out on it. We actually had it in a home game, and they didn't think it was cheating, but it was. They didn't understand why they were cheating, and I had to explain to them. And then they got very upset that I would call them cheaters, and there was a big, divide, I guess, in the game, because people that knew what they were talking about realized, yeah, they are cheating, but people that didn't, like the amateurs in the game, the ones that we want them to play, they're like, oh no, that's not cheating. That's just, um, them being friendly or whatever. Um, so yeah, I mean, I've caught some people cheating, and yeah, it does suck.
What were they doing?
So basically, they would check it down to the river when they got heads up. But what they were doing was, so they would bet people out of the hands. Like, so if me and you were playing in a hand, and he's in the hand with me, they would keep raising the pot or making it bigger to run the person out. And then when that was out, they would check it down and split the money essentially. But they basically just had an agreement they were going to check it down when it gets to the river. Well, there was a hand where they had one of the amateurs was all in, and he had a king high flush draw. Well, the other person had an ace high flush draw, and the other guy had a flop set. So what should have happened is the guy that had the set should have put a lot of pressure on the guy with the ace high flush draw, because they had a lot more money and ran him out of the pot, giving the guy with the king high flush draw a chance to win, because the guy had the nuts and he decided to check it down with the other guy. So essentially, this one guy had no chance at winning whatsoever by them checking it down. And by doing that, they're stealing from this guy. They're stealing like 12. The pot was like 12 grand, and they had like 20 grand behind on each of them. So the guy with the set should have pushed the other guy off, but they checked it down and screwed this guy because the flush ended up coming, and the guy with ace high won. The guy with the king high flush should have won because the guy wouldn't have called 20,000 more trying to hit a flush.
Yeah.
But by them just always betting a lot and then checking it down on the river, it makes it to where they're taking away people's realized equity in the hand. Like Pablo in Omaha, that's the game we play. There's a lot of equity as you proceed in the hand, and by people running you off that equity and then checking it down, they're essentially they're stealing money out of your pot, out of your pocket essentially by running you out of hand so they can check it down later. And it doesn't seem like it's that bad or big a deal when you're playing in the game. It's like, oh man, they're just friendly, they're just checking it down. But they play really hard at people when there's three of them in a pot because they have two chances to win, and then when they get you out, they check it down.
And you can
So-
usually, like, one of the signs that somebody or some people are doing that, isn't it like called the squeeze, where if they're at the table, they'll be very aggressive on the seat change so they can be on two opposite ends, right? So
It doesn't really matter that much. They would always sit next to each other. So, and they, when one folded, if one did fold, the other would show their cards to them, and like they were doing a lot of stuff. It's a friendly home game though, so like people really didn't say much about it. And we did things that were a little bit suspect, but like this was so bad that like I had to call them out on it, and I basically told them we're cheating. One guy never came back. The other, was the game runner, and they both got very upset that I was calling him out on cheating. But again, I had to explain to everybody in the game, and they didn't. In their defense, they did not understand that they were cheating. They thought they were just being friendly with each other. They're like best friends, so we're not going to bet against each other. We're just going to check it down with each other. So in their defense, like they weren't intentionally, in their eyes, trying to angle or try to take advantage of other players. But the thing is we were playing for so much money that you can't have that going on when you're playing for that much money. You have to play your hand like you're playing against anybody else.
right.
You can't be
Yeah.
easy on your friend, and check it down because, again, when you're playing for this much money, that just it takes advantage of other players in the game.
Yeah, you got to take that over to Chuck's house. $2 games. Do that.
Yeah,
Do that over there.
Yeah, if you want to do that for 50, $100, whatever, go for it. Do what you do. But when you start playing for tens of thousands of dollars, you can't be. That's just too much money for people to be. We did suspect things. You know, we did things that wouldn't fly in a casino. That's why we play in a home game. But and then actually this hand actually happened in the casino. They did it in the casino during a WSOP series. We're playing a cash game, and I called them out on it in the casino. And the guy that they did it to didn't even realize that anything was bad happening. He's like, "Oh, they always check it down." I'm like, dude, don't you understand? Like, I explained to him, why he lost all his equity in the hand by them not betting each other. And
Yeah.
then it's kind of a light switched on. He's like, "Well, damn, man, yeah, he went from having he had like 7 outs to the flush comes." So he has 7 outs twice, so he's got like 36% chance to win the hand. If they bet correctly, he's going to have 36% chance to win this hand. But since they didn't bet correctly, they checked it down. He had 0% chance. They took away all his equity in the hand. Like his equity in the hand was about $4,000 of the 12,000 in the pot. But
Yeah.
they basically stole that equity from him by not being aggressive towards each other.
Yeah. I've seen, some of these guys try to work an angle like with that squeeze play that I learned about. And I've watched, I can't say yes or no, but I watch it. And then I hear the conversations and I see the friendly, like, hey, do you need this? Do you need that? And too much sharing, you know what I mean? Like being friendly is one thing, but when you're sitting there and I think they just have a big pot of money that they all dip from, and then they go and they work the tables. So, you have to keep an eye on that stuff.
It happens. I mean, there are teams that come in and play, and the ones that are good, you'll just never know. They'll just play normal. Like honestly, like you could go in with three of your buddies, and you just play really hard against each other and split it up at the end, but no one would ever know. Like we just play hard the whole time, but we're all playing out of the same pot, but no one would ever know. Like you can't ever catch that stuff at the end of the day. The one things you can catch is when people start soft playing and start uh, playing different ways against different people, not because of um, the play of the game, but because they're friends or they want to take it easy on their opponent
Right.
because they're friends.
Yeah. Well, are you coming into town for the full 2 weeks? Will you be?
No, I
No.
won't be there for the full 2 weeks. I'm going to come in towards the main event. I'm going to come in, I think I think I get there on the 11th or 12th.
Okay. And you're strictly just playing your tournament, or are you going to play cash, or?
I'm going to play cash, and then I'll play my tournament, and then I'm going to fly over to the Bahamas and play that.
What, Atlantis or Bahamar?
Honestly, I don't even know where the tournament is, to be honest. I think it's at the Atlantis.
Is it
Wherever they
Atlantis?
drop you off, but you play poker here. Go ahead, go on.
Atlantis doesn't have a poker room, I don't think, unless they just got one. Maybe
Neither one has a poker room. We play in the big pavilion or the big conference centers over there.
Oh, that's
Poker
cool.
Stars used to have it for years. This is a WSOP event. I did not go last year, but I'm going this year. So I don't. But again, I don't know if it's at Bahamar. I think last year we were at Bahamar, or the last time I went. But
Yeah, we used to go every summer to Atlantis. I love Atlantis. I love the Bahamas. Absolutely, my favorite.
yeah, it's pretty sick.
Yeah. So moneymakerpt.com, orangecitypoker.com. Now, I'm talking to Chris because of the Orange City Poker Tournament, December 4th to the 16th, 700,000 guarantees, 23 trophy events. But wherever you're listening, make sure you are going to moneymakerpt.com to see if there's an event near you.
We got events all over. We have them in Cincinnati. We are in Texas. We're in Florida quite a bit. I know we're booking some up in the Northeast. We're booking some out in California. We just had one in Aruba. We're talking about doing one in Mexico coming up. So we're starting to spread more internationally. Looks like we're going to have about 13 events in 2025.
Wow, there's I just moved from the Sacramento area. I was a horrible situation for a year out there for me in radio, but the Thunder Valley Casino was 10 minutes from my house. They have a really good poker room, a really, really, really good poker, and it's well run too. They have their tournaments are well structured, and their cash games, a lot of good players and a lot of good action there.
Yep, we've definitely talked to them, and that might be one of the places that we might be going out in California. We've got a couple, like 3 or 4 different ones out in California we're talking to right now, trying to figure out what's the best fit.
Yeah, I know like a lot of those pros in NorCal would come down, or come over for that as well. Because, I mean, there's a bunch of poker rooms, Stoney's and all these other things, but without a doubt, Thunder Valley's the best. And Sky River, the new casino that opened up a couple years ago, they were a sponsor of my show. They don't want to put a poker room in. They refused to put a poker room in. They didn't want to do any. I wanted to do a charity poker game. They didn't want to do that. I was like, oh, okay. Well, sorry.
Well, poker costs more money than everything else to run.
Right.
So
I understand that.
And the floor space that it takes up is, much better used for slot machines.
Right. Exactly. All right, Chris Moneymaker, brother, thank you so much for all this time. It was a pleasure meeting you. Fantastic stories. I love hearing poker stories. And thanks for the advice. And I will see you when you get into town, and I'll come up and introduce myself and say thanks again, and I'll play in your tournament. All right.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.
See you later.
Dude.
Later. There you go. Chris Moneymaker. Moneymakerpt.com is the website.